Good afternoon. So welcome everyone. We're convening a special meeting to continue our fiscal year 20 budget deliberations. Today is July 15th, 2019. The time is 1:01 p.m. Calling this meeting to order. Attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I don't hear of any. So we'll move on with our business and potential action items. Item number 1, deliberations and decisions regarding wage study final numbers, which very appropriately is indicated as delayed, which it is. What I can say with some measure of accuracy is that with the delayed implementation of January 1st, the figure is about just under 1.8 million for fiscal 20. Is that correct? So far?
Yes.
I think we have 2 up there, Dina?
Yeah, 2.7.
Okay.
So I've
All right.
taken that down to be 9 months. So this would be 12 months.
That's 12 months, right?
And then I left solid waste out. And so this is the number to balance. So the government portion of that would be at the 3 months coming out would put you at this deficit. So was there any more commentary on the wage study at this point, or would you like me to proceed?
No, not much. We're still trying to work through the sheriff's organization. It gets complex with the matrix, and we've taken iteration after iteration, and there's still more work to be done. And I think Nancy and Dan and Sylvia are going to be meeting after we conclude here. Sylvia, do you want to jump in here?
No, I think you were clear about that in terms of there's still more work to do with the sheriff's matrix and some discussions that we've had individually with the commissioners and what that direction is. So we'll proceed with that.
Can you give us, other elected officials, maybe an overview of what that work needs to be done? What are we talking about?
So with the sheriff's matrix, last week we were directed to create the matrix following Coeur d'Alene wages, which I'll say is below the BDPA survey average, just so everybody knows. But as we're looking at the cost projections, some of them are really significant. And so each of the commissioners have indicated for us to analyze the increases at no more, capping it at a 5% increase. And that would be for management, so command staff from the sheriff's office, but also management within the general pay plan and the attorney's pay plan. So we need to refigure those numbers and go from there and see if there's any compression by doing that and what that looks like, and make some recommendations to make sure that doesn't happen.
Did I answer your question?
No.
Did we leave you more confused?
No.
Yeah, the best way to, I guess the best way to explain it is it's very complex. When you get into the matrix and the various levels and the certifications, I'm referring obviously to law enforcement, it gets very complex. And if it wasn't constructed correctly to begin with, and I don't know that it was or wasn't, but I don't think we had the degree of expertise that we have now with our HR, then what happens is you're building on something that might have been imperfect to begin with. So I think that's what we're trying to work through right now. You know, we thought we had it, but then it turns out there were other ingredients that we might have missed, and so that's what's happening. We're trying to make it right, but that's okay.
And this week I'm scheduling the meetings with all the elected officials to start those discussions so you can see the whole pay plan as a whole in a very preliminary proposal perspective, because nothing's final till the commissioners give their approval of the plan.
And that whole pay plan includes the sworn and the rest of the non-sworn staff. So
Correct.
We're gonna see the entirety of that.
You'll see the different schedules and how the positions laid out. You will not see individual names, employee names, and what those increases look like, because it's too early to have that information available yet, because that's still the work in progress that we're working with Nancy on. As we're given scenarios, Nancy's plugging it in. And of course, everything's unaudited, and then we would pass it on to Dina and her team. Once we're at a point where we say, okay, this is the route we're going, then we'll have Dina and her team review it and make sure it's valid and correct to their standards as well.
Yes, Dan?
Chris, just to add to what has already been said, the prior matrices, and that would include with the inception of the matrix, was done in concert with HR. And, you know, they were done with the vote of prior boards. And I want this to be clear on the record, that, you know, the boards gave us direction on what we could do with the salary on the matrix. It's not like we plucked something up and we could deal with what was inside the matrix without the board's approval. So, you know, it's very important that it's understood that where we're at today is completely a result of, on the matrix, with the agreement of prior boards.
Oh, clearly, yeah.
Ben, did you have anything to add?
Well, it actually worked very well until a couple of boards ago, and one commissioner directed a different direction with the matrix, and that's where we got kind of messed up. And we've been trying to correct it ever since.
Yes, sir.
Just to expand a little bit on what Claudia said, you'll be able to see every position in every office in the county. Not for every employee, right? But in terms of where they're graded, what the range, proposed range would be. And what, so.
Okay. Dina?
So just to pick up where we left off, yes, we're still working through the numbers. I would just ask those working on the plan, is this loaded figure 2.719, is that, are we comfortable that that would cover it, worst case scenario?
The worst case scenario, we're looking closer to 2.35 maybe.
Okay, and is that unloaded or loaded?
That is loaded.
Okay.
Did you say 2.35 or 3.35?
2.35.
But if we're going to put 5% limits on the general pay plan and the sworn, that's going to go down.
Okay, and then the bonuses, that was also included?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is, if I use this as a plugged figure for the full study, then I'm not gonna under budget for the purposes of our work this week. So for right now, it sounds like this is a safe number to just
Yes.
let it be
Yes.
for now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Nancy mentioned the 5% limit.
Right.
Sylvia, you want to elaborate on that? I don't want to give the impression that people are all topping out at a 5% increase.
Right.
So I hope you guys don't think that was the case.
So where we're
ahead.
counting that is in senior leadership positions and the command staff. So there were some large double-digit increases just looking at first scenario and what those might look like. And the board was not comfortable with that. And
These are large double-digit increases as a result of the survey we did, or was that?
yes,
Okay.
as a
It's-
result of the survey and placement of positions in the proper ranges in the new proposed schedule. And part of it's because of the matrix and how it works from the sworn officer perspective and making sure there's no compression. But that was a work in progress, of course. And as we're moving along, we're able to identify some of those things and make sure that the decision makers here are comfortable with where we're proceeding with the scale.
I was going to say, we're bringing almost everybody to Coeur d'Alene wages, not to the market, because the market was a little higher.
For the sworn. Now, we're using BDPA salary survey average market data to help us in the construction of and the development of the general pay plan and the attorney pay plan. So that is BDPA survey averages that we used. but with the sworn matrix, it was Coeur d'Alene, which is less.
So we have now two sources that we're using for salary.
And the city of Coeur d'Alene was included in all this, the whole study, whether it was sworn or general pay plan and attorney. But the board has directed us to build the sworn officer matrix around the Coeur d'Alene rates, current rates.
Yes, Dan?
Yeah, just again to follow up on what Sylvia said, I saw some of those raises. They are double digit in the command staff. We've talked, and I don't think any of us agree that we'd all like to make that kind of money, but in the context of the rest of the county government, it's probably more than most people can understand. But it ends up being a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you have what the survey says, and what the indication is what a fair wage is for what that person is in their individual rank, versus what the board and frankly, the rest of us have to stomach when you see raises that big. So I understand that, and Ben understands the board's dilemma there, and we're willing to work with you, but I just want it on the record that, for the future, we have to bear in mind that being competitive at all levels is important. And just because the command staff, and that's who we're talking about, make proportionately more money than others, when there's a percentage of that raise given, and historically as we move forward, their raises end up being more because when they give a percentage, the percentage of the higher dollar amount is a higher raise. And that ends up being necessary for obvious reasons, because if you don't do that, you create compression. And again, I understand there's some sticker shock. There is for me too. Personally, just looking at a raise that big for me personally, I feel bad about it. And, I'd love it, but in my mind, I have a hard time reconciling it. And so, again, we understand where you're coming from. We want to work with you, but we do want to be conscious of the fact that there should not be compression, and that there should not be a disregard of what salaries ought to be.
Okay. Anything else?
Bigger question?
Yes, sir.
So I'm not sure I can see what the amount of money yet to be cut to balance using the number that we are currently, is that?
609?
476.
476.
Okay.
And that's tentative.
All right.
And that's just on the government side. So
Yeah.
the increases on the solid waste is immediate fiscal year beginning day one, or is that also delayed?
That would be delayed just for consistency's sake.
So I guess my question is, if whatever that number ends up being, if the cost of the proposed salary increases, which as I understand it is 97% across the board, is that correct, Sylvia? No?
No, we're using 100% of market ranges.
Oh, for most one?
Yes.
Okay, scratch that. Thank you.
Anything else on wages? Okay, let's move on.
All right, so just one final thing on wages too. I'm sure everybody knows, but I'll just say it for the sake of the record, that we are scheduled to implement this in January. So for fiscal year 2021, we'll have the full amount
Precisely.
to budget for, plus matrix moves to budget.
Exactly.
So there will be a snowball effect.
So this year, we are not doing matrix moves, is that correct? We're doing the wage study instead.
And that's my assumption, is that everyone would move with the wage study, and that would be the primary driver.
Okay.
Is that everybody's understanding as well?
Is that your Sylvia as well?
That was not my understanding, that if they're in year 4, when they move to year 5 in the new matrix,
Well, sure, but then.
That's a matrix
They
move.
wouldn't get, they would get that matrix move, but they wouldn't get the increment of the old matrix move with the new one.
It would be, the calculations are going to be where they are on October 1st, so that it would be fair for everybody. So where they land within the matrix on October 1st is where they would stay for the fiscal year.
so you're gonna freeze the matrix movement free, is what you're gonna say.
That's how the analysis was.
Okay, that's how the
done.
analysis came out.
And that's why the number for sworn matrix wage increases, I believe, was removed.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
Well,
Okay.
I just want to say one thing. Going forward, I really want to look at CPI and inflation to figure out raises to keep things going in the right direction. I think for elected officials, we have is 3% raise included? Is it 3%
Yes.
right
Is
now?
that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so for me, I would prefer that be CPI and inflation, average of those things instead of the 3%. But I'm just throwing that out there, so I don't, if I have a
For
second.
EOs,
Mhm.
for EOs.
If I have a second, I have a second. If I don't, I don't. But I
Bill,
just,
thoughts?
that's my,
I think it's too early to get into that right now.
We're gonna have to do it within the next few days.
No? Yeah.
You wanna hold off?
Can
Go ahead.
can I just mention something? I know in the presentation Sylvia gave us to the elected officials last month, it showed that all the EOs were significantly behind the market, significantly. I think Barry was the least at about 14%, and I was almost 29.5%. Now, are you talking 3% on top of bringing yourself towards the market, or 3% in each year, or only 3% because we're so far out of whack?
No, the discussion was 3% in January,
Rather than the wage study.
rather than the wage study for this year,
So-
that's correct.
So what I'm hearing is, we did a wage study, but we're just going to basically ignore most of the wage study, because EOs aren't going to go to the wage study. The wage study's higher than Coeur d'Alene City, so we're not going to go to that. The command staff, the wage study, so they're well below the wage study numbers, but we're not going to pay attention to that. I guess I've heard this over and over again, board after board. It's, why do we do a wage study if we don't listen to it?
Well, the answer is, we are listening to it in the vast majority of cases. Look, I can cite you cases where we have people that are, according to the wage study, 40% underpaid. I'm
Okay.
specifically referring to the planners in David's group. We're not gonna give 40% pay raises. Okay, now you say we are ignoring the study. No, we're considering the study, but we also have to balance that against budget. So now, to your point with regard to the EOs, you have a valid point. EOs haven't had an increase in,
Many years.
is it, Rich, you know better than I do.
Yeah, I'd say
Since
significant.
2012, is it?
Yeah, somewhere.
Okay. And so that's obviously a consideration. Now, some people would say, well, you guys, and ladies, signed up for this. Oh, yeah, we did. Okay, but again, we still have a budget, we have to stay within that. And so we're trying to manage within that context. So what we talked about, we haven't decided it officially, was 3% for the EOs effective January of 2020. Now, if we go with the wage study, some of the increases, for example, for county commissioner, we earn just under 73, the wage study says 90. I don't know, does anybody know, what are the others offhand?
I can, I have it.
Assessor is currently at $58.90 a month. The survey average is $75.32 a month. Clerk, $58.90 to $75.60 a month. Commissioners, $6,000 a month, $6,071 a month, $75.11 a month. Coroner from, this is wrong number, $52.62 to $65.15. Prosecutor from $94.76 to $10,879.
Then that's fine.
and
So
it
anyway,
continues.
if you can convince two people to go with the study, that's fine.
I'd like to hear the rest of them, if you don't mind, Commissioner.
I'm sorry?
Can we hear the rest of her report? Oh,
The current annual
Well, she was, I
wages-
went annual and Sylvia was
Yeah, I
going
was
monthly.
doing monthly, I had monthly. Go ahead,
Okay.
Dina.
So I went ahead and pulled this, these are the current annual rates based on the rates during the system. And I just did a quick top line 3% increase, which would have an economic impact of about 21,000. I think, Sylvia, wasn't the impact of the EO increase about 130?
160, not
168.
loaded. Not loaded. And
Right,
I
and
think
this
it was a
isn't
little
loaded
over
either.
200,000 loaded.
Yeah, so this is not loaded either, so if we go, that would constitute that much savings if you went with a 3% increase. That's not loaded. And that would be a full year. But it's a substantial difference from the wage study.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go flat out and just say I'm not in support of the wage study for the EOs for this year. It's just that simple. I'm not gonna do it.
Me neither, and I would
I'll go
ask.
3%, but I'm not gonna go for the full amount. And we are underpaid, let me state that for the record. Bonner County, 28% of our population, 60% of our budget, 80,000 for a county commissioner. Ada, 111, and by the way, they're going into foregone, right? For $5.5 million. So I could make a case, but I'm not gonna go there this year. That's me speaking, I guess.
I say that, you know, we signed up for it. I don't like to go backwards, so I would say CPI plus inflation, that average, that's what I would support. That's where I'm at.
Do you know what that means? CPI plus
It was like 1.6 plus 1.9 in the average of those, so it would be less than a 2% increase.
Except the people that produce the CPI must not buy houses or shop for food.
Well, food and fuel aren't included in the CPI.
They're not.
They're not included.
That's correct, it's ex-food and energy, yes. you're
Yeah.
right. Anyway. Do you want to weigh in here, please?
No, I think we should, I didn't come here to make money. It's true.
So you came to lose money.
No,
that's
I
what
came
you-
here to do service, and I knew what the salary was when I signed up.
But commissioners, if I may, you know, Rich and I, we're career guys here. I've been here over 36, he's been here over 27. And no offense, but you guys are kind of post-career public service time. And, you know, we started this business, we got to the top end because we worked hard. It's a career for us, not a post-career activity or service. I guess that's the difference. I mean, Steve, you're kind of post-career. Barry's kind of in and out of post-career. Jim's post-career. You know, Dr. King's kind of post-career. You know, it's a difference for a couple of us that have been here a long time and dedicated our lives, our adult lives to this place. And so I guess that's my pitch, for what it's worth.
I'm 100% agreeing with that. There's I guess two different types of individuals that work for the county, and that is the career-minded individual that sees the end of the goal, which I did when I started in 1986. I thought I could work my way in to be assessor, which I did. It took me a few years to do it. It's been a good career. However, when I get to the top and then I select my chief deputy, the second that he became chief deputy, he then made more than I did. And it's just, you know, you have the ability to fix the problem.
And likewise, we have department heads that make more than we do.
Yeah.
So, your points are noted. I've made my position known, I think Leslie, I think we all have, right? Let's move on.
Okay, so this shows the economic impact at 2% just for informational purposes.
Okay.
All right, so do we want to pencil in this 3%?
I'm fine with 3.
Okay,
Leslie?
Leslie?
I'd rather go to
2%.
2%. What about you?
No, I just said 3.
3. I'll say 3.
Okay. All right, and this is an estimate anyway, and this will come out.
Yeah, we're not done yet by all means.
No, but we do want to get to 0, so we can start.
Sylvia, wasn't that in the analysis in the wage study at 3?
In the wage study, we have the full amount.
Yeah.
Mark,
No, the new numbers that I
Oh.
gave you is at 3%.
But that doesn't reflect what I have up here.
Right.
But the original numbers of the 2.719 were taking the elected officials to the market.
Okay,
So the full 20-some%. Yes.
okay, so then it's correct to reduce by that. Okay? So here's the other one. Got a call today, or actually an email today from Scott Burkhardt, our friends at Alliant. He said that there could be, this is unofficial, could be some savings on stop loss. We're not for sure. They're gonna need a little bit more information, but we tentatively could plug in $140,000 in savings. So I went ahead and did that here just for the purposes of today, but this one is not 100% sure right now. But if we do that,
It's 140,000 saving in the premium for the stop loss.
yes. So if we do that, and then there were some adjustments for building and grounds that Commissioner Duncan had mentioned. I went ahead and brought these up.
Can you go to 8010? Because I think 8010 already has 2,000 in it.
Yeah, you don't need the 2,000, you just need to
Yeah, the
move the money.
5,000 would be the only increase.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's do that.
So it was discovered that they don't need uniforms as much as they need safety equipment. And so they're they're splitting their budget to fill the safety equipment instead of asking for more. But the 5,000 is, you can speak more to this, it's a test that's coming up.
Yeah, the state every 5 years requires a load test on the elevators. It's about $5,000, involves fire department, your fire vendor, the state has to send the people up here, the elevator company. And so they sent notice that in January, the JJC is due, which is good because I finally got them to send notice because they would just tell you when it's due, and we didn't budget for it 2 years ago, and I got popped with $5,000 I wasn't planning on. So this way at least it'll be budgeted in 8236, which is license and inspections.
Okay, great. All right, there are some pending changes. I've been kind of missing Captain Smart. We've been phoning and emailing back and forth. There are a couple of positions that were going to be reclassed, and so we're still working out the numbers in those. The changes from what we currently have in the budget are pretty immaterial, but we are still working through those, so I wanted to make you aware of those. So we talked about the wage study, we talked about the elected phase-in. Vehicles, at this point in time, we're just gonna leave it at 700,000. Steve had sent an email with some numbers from US Bank. So everything's still kind of, in the air, but I think at 700,000, that's probably a good placeholder at this point. So we'll leave that.
Yep.
Contingency, I sent out a document this morning, just taking a peek at contingency because we had cut it back a little bit, 200,000 last week. So what I did here, and this is just kind of messy, but I went ahead and did some screen captures of our contingency resolutions that we've done over the years. This was last year, the year before. Kind of shows you, where a lot of this is going. It's capital cases, it's jail overcrowding, it's justice services, that kind of thing. Prior years, there was some grant match in there. But basically, last year we decided because of justice overspend with the legal system, we went ahead and we plugged in another $250 in the justice fund contingency, and we left the general fund contingency alone. So for 2020 right now, this number will be 300,000 instead of 500,000. So just want to make you aware, just give some context to that decision. Any questions?
No. What's factored into your overall deficit? Is it 500 or 300?
300.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, just in the interest of transparency and going back to our conversation at the last budget meeting relative to frozen positions.
Yes.
Captain Edmondson spoke to this before about where we were at, and we got a more significant rundown today about how those positions are stacking up. And Kim, do you want to speak to that now where we're sitting? Because we've got 7 positions open and we've got 7 that can be full. And so we froze 2. I can't tell you when we're gonna, well, we got 2 positions that are pending people ready for polygraph. I'll let you take it from there, but
Yeah, we have currently the 7 positions that are open. 2 of those are going to be taken by Marine deputies. We do that annually. Many of the guys that want to come to patrol, if they pass the tests, they can move in if they're accepted. 2 of them were. We also have 2 detention deputies that did oral boards last week that are also going to move over into patrol transfers. So that leaves us with 3 openings. If you froze 2 of those, I've already got conditional offer out for 1 person on lateral. So that would be the last position that would be available. But I also have another lateral who's already gone through training coming in for polygraph from another state, out of state next week. And an entry-level person that's also from out of state coming in for a polygraph next week, which would fill up my 7 positions that are available right now. I've got 4 others in backgrounds for pending positions, which would be planned out for, like we have a November retirement that's coming up, and we'd be able to have an eligibility list started. Not to mention the fact that we are continually recruiting and continually testing for those positions to develop that list. And so the potential for us to continue to have applicants there is you know, very strong, as I said last week, but I can fill those patrol positions right in the very near future with the people that we have and where they're at through the background process. So by freezing those 2 positions, it takes away that opportunity for us to fill what we have a need for in patrol.
How long have those 2 positions been open?
973 and 925.
Days.
Well,
Yes.
and that's only based on an assignment of a number. I mean, if you were to have filled the longest positions, they wouldn't look like that.
Sylvia Proud HR, just for clarification, when we fill a position, we work with Marcia at the sheriff's office, and we always use the position number of the oldest opening to fill it, and we always verify that with Marcia, so.
It doesn't seem to always translate that way when it gets to payroll.
There's a communication problem there then, because she says she tries to use those and isn't able to use those oldest positions that are open. She's trying to get those off of the open position number or list, so
Okay.
something we need to work out
That's, yeah,
internally.
I'll have
So are you
Kim work
saying
with
that-
Marcia on that then, 'cause that's
Okay,
what
are you
Marcia's.
saying that all 7
Kim's saying.
positions are spoken for? That is to say, there are people in various stages of qualifying?
Yes and no. Right now, I've got 4 that are spoken for. There are 2 Marine deputies who have already passed our backgrounds that work for us. They
Okay.
just had to go through a couple of additional tests to become, you know, their psych evaluation, which I just got back
Okay.
Friday. And 2 jail deputies that did interview last week for patrol positions that their transfers would be authorized. So that's 4
So
positions.
that's 4, go ahead.
Leaves me with 3. I have
Okay.
1 person in a conditional offer that just passed a polygraph last week, and so he is only needing to take a physical, medical check.
So that's
And the
5.
guy's, yeah, lateral, he's gonna go through that just fine.
And then,
And then 2 others, that one is a lateral that's gone through all of the background process and just needs to take a polygraph. And another that's an entry level that has a polygraph scheduled next week.
so that individual's been through the physical and the written?
so there's a bottom line here. When we can all,
That's all right.
there's a lot of minutia, but the bottom line is we gave up, we didn't give up the positions, but we, you know, agreed to freeze 2. All we're trying to tell you is that, and I think we tried telling you during the last meeting, that there were people in the works for those, and now when we find out what the bottom line is in terms of where they are in process, I'm not being completely truthful with you by saying, you know, if you're taking 150 grand or whatever it is off the top for those frozen positions, and then we say, you know, a month from now, well, we're gonna unfreeze them, you're probably gonna say, well, why the heck didn't you tell us that
Well, no,
in the
no,
budget
yeah.
process?
But that
We're
is
trying to
what,
be on-
that is what I asked last
Yeah.
week specifically, was that I would be, would you be willing to have me come back as we could fill those and ask, and it would probably be sooner than later because of how close we are with these.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you've got
folks.
people in various phases that have already passed, one item or two items, then I'm fine, personally. I mean, so let's,
That's 150,000.
yeah, let's put those 7 aside, because what you're telling me is they're all in various stages of qualifying, right?
Yes,
Leslie, Bill? Am I missing something?
but it's $150,000 that we basically have to have Dana add back in.
So my question would be, when would the 7th position be starting? Because if they're waiting to take the polygraph, how many more months is that?
Oh, it's days.
Yeah, it's days. We'll get them started as soon as they can clear up whatever they need to. They're out-of-state applicants, so they probably need to put in notice at the jobs they're at and move here. And that's the case, we oftentimes let them pick the date or we bring them in sooner.
So all 7 should be on board by October
October
1st.
1st.
That's what I'm hoping. I think I have the potential to probably bring them all on by the end of August.
So the whole intent here is transparency, and I want to be clear about that. We talked about this before.
No, that's fine.
We don't want the board to think that we just let something slide through. And we agreed to freeze those, but Kim was straightforward last time about telling you guys that we're going to come back with the actual numbers.
Okay, so let's move on to jail. How many openings? Is it 7?
2 jail openings right now, but we will have 2 more because of the 2 people transferring. And is there another retirement coming up?
Mark Skinlow will retire in November.
Well, that'll be on the
Jail.
patrol side. So there are 2 right now and 2 when the Marine deputies, or when the detention deputies transfer to patrol. So
Okay,
there will be 4.
there will be 4, okay. And you say one person is retiring?
In November.
That's a patrol
That's
position.
patrol.
Yeah,
Yeah,
patrol.
that's a patrol position.
Oh, okay. So then, can we freeze 2 of the 7 positions in the jail?
Well, I think well, I'll speak frankly here too. As soon as, some of the wage information comes out, I think that we have some other detention folks that are looking to move outside of our agency. So we're gonna have to ramp up again on the detention side. And so I would not want to give up those positions, considering that just barely gets them where they need for staffing with the full facility open right now.
So then why don't we freeze them for 6 months?
So Chris and Ben, I don't want to speak over you, what you feel about it, but I'll just say this. The risk that you run is, trying to kick it down the road a little bit and pick it up then, is that these are positions that are already allotted, that we all agreed upon that we needed to staff, whether it's in patrol or at the jail. I understand what the board's trying to do, and I guess we can discuss this, but Ben, what do you think about the
I would very much oppose the jail, the loss of staff we have there, and the more overtime we spend. And it's hard enough getting guys into the jail, and we're not gonna adjust the wages, will it be harder yet?
And they cut the overtime significantly in the
So
last round.
we have to, but I think that, and the jail works on a staffing program that is barely above minimums anyway, and not knowing what's gonna happen down the road, I'd be very hesitant to freeze any of those positions.
Leslie, I'm sorry, Dina, go ahead.
We look so much alike. So there's a control room operator position that's been open for 915 days. There are some other, there's another control room person that's also open for a shorter time. And then there are 3 EOCs. Is there a willingness maybe to freeze this very long unfilled control room person and maybe one of the EOCs, just to try to regain some ground there?
I can't speak for the control room operator because I think we have one that just moved through the process that would be, that has a conditional offer out right now.
Okay.
We would probably be able to use the ECOs. I don't want to speak for Kevin's
we're trying to fill a number of positions there, vacant supervisors positions and other things that he really needs to have those ECOs on board too.
Sure.
If I were the division commander, I would say that they're not eligible for.
Well, Commissioners, I could
Sure.
speak a little bit on that as well. Yes, we have there 4 spots that we're trying to fill. We have 8 that are, we have 6 in backgrounds with potential of 2 more just sitting in the wings to go to backgrounds if others were to drop off. So the numbers game, 8 for 4 or 10 for 4, we're close to being able to fill those 2. It's just a time frame of how long it takes to get through backgrounds. And again, by the end of the summer, by September, we have the potential to probably fill those. And that's almost the #1 overtime gig right now is from the 911 center. We have mandated overtimes just to keep the staffing levels up where it's needed. They're just in a hurt down there. We need those bodies.
So what can you forfeit by way of your rate budget, new hires?
So, you know, I'm gonna go out a little bit on a limb, okay?
We live on a limb.
I know.
Go ahead.
And my boss over there has got to agree with this, but I've been sort of managing this part of it, we've been communicating. I think we could probably, we could freeze one,
Okay.
and let me qualify that, one deputy sheriff position, and I'm predicating that on the knowledge that we're gonna have a retirement in November, so that's not gonna hurt me in the meantime. That's in another fiscal year. And so, the bottom line here is, do I think that we could forfeit one with the understanding that come the next fiscal year, and I think that's where we're headed, that it gets unthawed then? I mean, I can't tell you how, I don't have a crystal ball to say how long we can go without that, but these are minimum staffing levels. So my question to the board is, when we say we're willing to freeze it, well, for how long? That's a fair question. We need the bodies.
Well, we review everything at the start of every budget cycle, so it'll get reviewed again for fiscal '21.
But does freeze mean what?
Freeze isn't indefinite.
No, it
Freeze
gets
is for the
thought-
next fiscal year.
It
That's
gets
all.
thought for the new fiscal year.
Yeah.
So if we say, for purposes of this year, if we say we'll give up one for 75 grand-ish, are you saying that if we can fill that position after October 1, it gets unthought?
Then that would be fund balance.
Yep.
So I'd rather not do that.
So, but see, this is where we're getting.
You mean October 1 of this year, 2019?
Yeah, fiscal year 20.
I thought you meant
Oh,
2021.
for fiscal year,
No, fiscal year 20. Because basically what you're going to end up doing is being a cut position. That's what we're talking about. If you're looking for $75,000 and you're saying we're going to freeze it, we can freeze it. But then as soon as it gets hired again, the $75,000 is just as necessary as it was before we froze it.
okay, so to answer your question specifically, I would say cut it for fiscal '20. Can you do that?
No. We're
Okay,
already
let's go into the
doing
B budget. Let's go. We're gonna balance by 3 o'clock, one way or
Commissioner,
the other.
you know, Commissioner, we gave up $325,000.
Well, you gave up from the ask.
I gave from the ask,
Correct.
but, you know, I got an office to run, and I got things that I gotta do, and I gotta put gas in cars and feed inmates and provide medical and all those things that have to be done. I don't have a whole lot more to give. You know, I mean, we took the 3% cut, and a 3% cut, and a 1% cut in years past. And before we started doing that, you know, we were always, you know, according to Jim, we were really tight on our budget. We were 97, 98%, you know, we were pretty accurate. And after those 3 years of cuts, we went over budget. And we were over budget about 3%. And, you know, we just don't have it to give. We cannot reduce service. We have a statutory obligation to provide the service. So I don't know what else I'm supposed to give on my B budget.
Well, go ahead.
Uniforms. Can we talk uniforms? I know talking to deputies that they said that the ones that are normally given sit in their closet because they wear the jumpsuits. Do you have jumpsuits and regular uniforms in the budget?
We don't have jumpsuits in the budget. We've asked for that, but it's been cut. And the idea was if we could do jumpsuits, we wouldn't have to do regular uniforms except for a dress uniform. So, you know, we've looked at that aspect as well.
Our deputies buy those personally.
Yeah, they buy the jumpsuits personally. So. And we've looked at reducing the number of uniforms we do if they're doing jumpsuits. But we're talking pennies here, when you're looking for tens of thousands.
Before we move on, I did want to mention, the auditor did look over the unanticipated revenue numbers and validated those, and the auditor team did some research regarding the new law for the liquor apportionment. And basically, the upshot is that liquor apportionments for the general fund will be reduced 0.8% per year over the course of like 5 years. And then that money will be rolled into the district court fund. Now, we looked at our records and we haven't seen anything yet for 2019 from the state for liquor apportionment for district court, but we can keep you informed when we do receive that.
3% per year for district court.
3% per
So
year
eventually,
increase. So
2023, 15%.
So eventually, we will see that money come back, but based on that, and based on conversation that Jennifer had with the state today, the projection that was given on Friday is appropriate. So we went ahead and plugged those numbers
Okay,
in
great,
as
thank you.
revenue.
Great.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Well, we're at $500,000. So
I can't squeeze, Nancy Jones says there's 10 grand that we were taking out of our budget. She's not here and I can't squeeze.
that was an employee
Did you get that?
appreciation event.
Yes,
So you
Yes.
want that reduced?
yes.
Okay.
Before we
Nancy?
reduce that 10,000, was there still the reclass you wanted to add back in, so maybe we only reduce it 5?
Right, so we have a front desk position that was up for reclassification, and I think that might have been cut. Can we add that back in? And take the difference?
Yeah, because we made the commitment when we brought the individual in, right?
Yeah. But it's just right for the position.
Okay, let me go to the summary for personnel, just to validate that.
So it's not on the sticky board, so it makes me think it got cut.
I believe it got cut, but I want to just validate it here
Okay,
while
so-
we're all together.
So we've got 500,000. I'm gonna need to look at some, what else is on the board?
Just a lot
All
of
right.
overtime.
So, yep, that's 4275. So let's go back.
Or is it -5?
Minus 4275.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's not a big deal.
And go down to equal sign.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Where'd we land on the cell phones? Does anybody remember how many are still in there?
I think we said 30.
Yeah, it's
That-
been
We
adjusted
created
to
bank of
30.
Okay.
All right, 498.
498.
And up on the board, you've got some capital. Of course, the sheriff's cars, the radios for 79,000. You've got express votes, an election machine. That's, that number's been reduced, but that's right around 130,000. The coroner's office remodel for 60,000. And that's pretty much it for capital. New programs, there's let's see. Why don't I go to the
that
summary?
first one's
Let me go
like
to the summary so
6,000.
we can see it better.
Well, I think we kind of went over, we started from right to left last time. Can we start from left to right this time? So
Yeah, go ahead.
OT in the civil department with soft code, is that going to go down? Because I assume that OT is above 2019 numbers. Is that correct? 2,000 in new ask. So with soft code, can you do without that overtime?
What currently are we, I don't know what currently.
I don't know, Dina would have to give us
I
a
mean,
number.
when we had originally
10,000.
drafted up the soft code proposal, I think we said we would reduce our overtime by almost $10,000 with the implementation of soft code.
Right,
So I'm
so
not
the-
sure what our ask was now.
We're reduced,
Okay.
it was reduced by 15%, so it went from 15,000 down to 8,500, and then loaded, that's 10.2.
Okay,
Look
but
at-
that's,
Assessment
is that
reduced.
additional from last year, above and beyond? So what is 2019 numbers? Do we have that anywhere?
You mean as of now?
Mm-hmm.
She'd have to project, so maybe you'd want to use
Well-
2018 numbers.
Let me see what you budgeted.
Either way.
Is that fair?
Well, I wasn't gonna cut 2019, I was just gonna see what the number is
Okay.
and go from that.
Right, so let's look at actuals. All right, so overtime right now, you're budgeted for 6,000, and you've used 14,000. So they're definitely looking at a lot of overtime usage, well over their budget.
So the question is how much can we reduce if we get soft code, right? And I don't have a crystal ball, but I just consulted with Captain Smart over here, and we're willing to cut that in half. We gotta have some money for overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have money for overtime already, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm
This
just saying-
$10,000 is above.
I'm just saying half of that, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, is half is 10,000 it'll work or not?
Yeah, I believe if you look at our 3-year trend, I think we've always kind of been budgeted for 4. And we've always, I think traditionally, we've been over that. With soft code, yeah, the hope is that we won't have that overtime need. So I guess,
Right.
but again, someone gets sick, boom, for a long extended period of time, we're gonna need to have that overtime. It's not the catch-all when things go bad. So there has to be something still in there. So, you know, if you went to 5, yeah, I'm sure, I would be hoping that we could easily monitor that. I think it would also give us a very good picture of what's gonna happen for our future with, you know, it'll take us a year to kind of get a better picture next year. You know, if we come out ahead, we can certainly reduce it again. I know it doesn't help you a lot right now, but,
Leslie, and that's 5 total, not 5 in addition, correct?
correct.
We're saying we're gonna go to 5,000 for that line item.
In 2021.
If we get soft.
Right.
So that's 5,000 off that. Well, actually, I don't know what that is off that.
Well, it's taking that away completely, but you're already over this year, so
We're saying 5,000
5,000 total
Total,
Total. Then-
correct, Kevin?
Yes, in that line item for this budget year.
$250.
for 2020 with soft code, you only need 5,000 overtime. Okay, then you can take that whole 10 off the board.
It's $127 increase over last year. Yeah.
And that's, let the record reflect with soft code.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Very
no
well
soft
aware
code,
of it.
we're gonna argue.
So what are we at? You're still out half a mil, right? Dina, we're still out half a mil?
Hang on. Okay.
Well, it gets harder as you get down to the final.
Is anybody here from district court?
No, but I think Jennifer can probably speak to
Patty,
them.
last week in the meeting when we left, said that I don't know, it's just what she had said to me, that the half-time float clerk for district court probably wasn't necessary because there isn't another judge-approved, magistrate judge-approved.
We need those.
No,
Oh, okay.
they've got to
I was just
have.
saying that that was what you said.
Yeah.
But there was
half back because they're dying there.
Yeah.
You gave it to them.
What she said.
What about the machines for elections?
My
How
concern
many
is
are
it's
in
a
there?
2020, we got 10.
Who knows?
10 of the small ones, and that's just gonna help with early voting. Then the big machine is still in there, right?
Yes.
For elections.
Yes.
I mean, because my issue is if you're not gonna do it this year, then you can wait a whole nother presidential cycle. Do you know what I mean? And so to me, it's worth it to take the hit and do it this year because it's gonna be really needed. You know,
The
after.
850, yeah, if we're
Yes.
looking at both of them, the DS 850 is something we do need for the ballots, the amount of ballots we'll have to run. For
Right.
those 3 elections, March, May, and November.
Yes.
What's our deficit?
Our deficit is like 450-ish, 470-ish. 488.
488. Anyone have any thoughts?
Do we want to take a little break?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's break until 2:05. So I'm going to treat my elephantitis.
What did you get stung?
Yeah.
Look at this.
I was looking at it.
slate, and we've got about 50 minutes left, so the time, I'm sorry, Lonnie. Okay, so the time is now 2:09 PM, we're resuming our budget deliberations. Okay, any other thoughts? Leslie, did you want to take something up?
Well, once again, and I know this is very unpopular, but unpopular doesn't make it wrong and popular doesn't make it right. I have said from the beginning that this is a huge, huge undertaking to implement in 1 year. So doing the study, you know, I agree with. Knowing what I know now, I don't agree with the agencies that we used because we only used 1/4 counties. So to me, a future wage study needs to include more counties. We are a county, we should be looked at by like on like, okay? So that being said, we're at where we're at. I think HR has done a phenomenal job of getting things down to taking the study and applying it to our county specifically. I think that's great and I appreciate all the hard work. I just concerned that we cannot, these are forever dollars. And so I want to make sure that going forward that it is as accurate as it can be. And so I would say 3% countywide and implement wage study next year. That's the looniness I have for today.
Go ahead.
Not for me, nope.
Me neither.
Okay.
It's a can that's been kicked down the road enough, and I'm not kicking it down anymore.
But it's
The
a,
wage study is not the issue. We can always cut back on the income.
it's a fair thing to bring up, Leslie.
But it is a fair thing to bring up, you know. If the 100% is creating a problem, we'll drop back to 97% if we need to do that. But I think as far as the wage study is concerned, I think Sylvia, Nancy, getting together with Dan, whatever, we're gonna need to do some final calculations. But Dina, what is your drop dead from us? When do you need a final number?
This week,
This week. So
This week.
Thursday's it.
Thursday's it. So if 2.7 is a good placeholder, that's what I'll leave for now. And then,
And I think
and then
that's
that
gonna-
gets reduced to 9 months. But that, I'm calculating it off of a full year and then reducing it down below. At that 647 is the reduction for that first quarter that we would leave out.
And what's fascinating in this whole process is when you guys, when I say you guys, Rich, you were part of it before my time, and you guys went off and did your wage study. Did you refer to yourselves as the Hay Group? Was that it?
PRC.
The PRC
Oh,
group.
PRC,
We didn't
sorry.
do a wage study. I mean,
Rated.
we rated positions, yeah.
But anyway, you guys came up with a figure, and I've heard this repeated often, of $2.2 million. To give everybody, in other words, to do a county-wide increase.
I think that was based off of the positions that we graded, but the PRC, the committee itself didn't have anything to do with any increase or wage numbers. We simply reviewed job descriptions and then rated them according to a scale that was provided to us through the Hay Group of
Okay.
what that position assignment should be.
Oddly-
HR provided those dollar
Okay.
amounts.
Oddly enough, coming at it differently through the BDPA process, I think we're probably gonna wind up on or around the same figure on an annualized basis, but, you know, I'm basically just going out on a limb, I guess, somewhat in saying that. But, you know, my concern is we've done this over and over again. When we distributed the 720, BDPA didn't work, Department of Labor didn't work. Everybody had a problem with one study or the other. From my perspective, the most relevant target areas are those to which we lose people. That is Coeur d'Alene, that's Post Falls, that's Spokane. We're not losing them to Ada. We don't lose them to Idaho County. We don't really lose any to Bonner, okay? So anyway, I'll leave well enough alone. But if, you know, I don't have a problem if we go from 100% to 97%, so I'll say that right now. But in any case, Sylvia, Nancy, Dan, just go off and work the numbers and see where we go. And we are gonna have to wrap this up by Thursday without a doubt, so.
So for the purposes of today, I did have a placeholder marked here for a discussion point. When we reduced the contingency, there's been some talk about the funeral home's status and paying for refrigeration, paying for cremations out of state that the indigent fund can't pay for. So I didn't know, since the coroner's here, maybe giving us an update on that, and should there be funds put aside in case that we have to cover costs through the general fund that could be covered by the indigent fund, given that issue?
I don't really know the rules on the indigent fund application to the cremations. The funeral home status, we are kind of on probation with one of our funeral homes eliminating us from their rotation. We're in talks with the funeral homes, and we are very positive that we can come to some agreement with the funeral homes. If we can't come to some agreement, then that's a worst case scenario, and I'm gonna have to ask the board to hire 2 more deputies. We're gonna have a place to store bodies and all that kind of stuff, and we're gonna have a transport vehicle. That's worst case. Best
Right.
case scenario is we continue with what we're doing.
Right. Right now, though, in your budget, how much do you have for the monthly rotation?
It's increasing. Last year was $1,500 a month. This year it's $2,500 a month per month for the year.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if there should be some additional dollars put towards that.
So-
In your negotiations, do you feel that there might need to be?
I think we're dealing with two different things here.
Okay.
So if indigents, the law is very clear, if it does not fit in the indigent box, then it's up to the Board of Commissioners to find another funding source, should we choose to do that.
Okay.
So it doesn't seem to be a problem for one of them, it's just a problem for another one. So I think that having discussions with them in the future, which we'll need to do sooner than later, I think we can come to some agreement and work that out. So right now, it's just, if we do any kind of increase, it's only going to affect indigents, and unfortunately, indigents is funded wholly out of their fund balance right now. So any increase that we agree to with the funeral homes is gonna come out of that fund balance. So we have to be very careful and just watch those things and be aware of what's gonna happen in January when Medicaid expansion takes hold. So-
Okay, great, thank you. So I guess all that's left is to maybe kick around some ideas of how you wanna finish balancing.
Thoughts?
Well, can we go back to the, it's the E911 positions, but you call them emergency communicators?
ECOs.
ECOs. Okay, so you have 3 that are essentially 2 years old. And you said you have people in background right now for those.
Yes.
We do.
Okay, once you are fully staffed, then can we reduce holiday buyback because somebody will be able to take a shift off?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
You're asking me to.
I know, predict the future. I get that, I hear that all the time. So my issue is salary salvage has been used in the past. I think that we need to reduce holiday buyback since we're not freezing those positions.
Well, you can think that, and I'm not going to agree with you.
Sure.
And the reason why is because that need has always been there. You pay for it. Those frozen positions have, and I think in any logical view, have nothing to do with holiday buyback. You have to pay it one way or the other.
Okay, I do understand that. So then what I would say is, let's see, what month is this? This is July. So you think that they can all be on board by October 1st?
You know, they could be, and we could lose 2 before then. You know, Leslie, I'd love to give you an exact, and I'm not trying to dodge the answer. It's
Right.
just, it's fluid. And do I, to answer your question, yes, I do think we could have them. Let me ask the expert, what do you think?
based on when I talk, and I don't want to step on Kim's toes, but when I talked to the background investigator, he kind of did a preliminary, just kind of down and dirty with me, saying, I don't see a bunch of stuff popping up right now. Now, will they get through the polygraph? I don't know. That's one of our, biggest sticking points we probably have, is that we get to that point and they don't. But I'm just, from a numbers game, we have 8 right now for 4 spots. And then, and we're always getting, again, like she said about, recruitment, we're getting more lateral views than we have, for a long time. We have multiples from California. We have another one from Snohomish right now who's very interested. And so we're getting more interest and more, desire to come to us. So I think it's a strong possibility that, yeah, by October 1, we can fill those.
Okay.
Going smooth, everything ironing out.
Right, so then back to my point, you don't actually have to pay the holiday buyback because you can tell them that they can get so many hours bought back. The other hours they have to take off when you're fully staffed.
Well, yeah.
It's not that simple though. Just because we hire them, they're not even gonna be trained and ready to go and able to, it just doesn't mean you hire them, it's like a clerk at Target. They gotta take 6 months or arguably even longer. I'm just trying to tell you that we wanna cooperate, but this isn't a good way to go about it, I don't think. I don't think it's a reasonable. Basically, what you're asking us to do is predict something we can't. And, those positions are there and were allotted for a reason, and that's because we need them. So that's my answer. How much is the holiday buyback?
$123,000.
Well, I see, with all due respect, I see a whole bunch of other people's stuff up on that board, and it's all coming off the sheriff's office. So why don't you look somewhere other than to us? How about that? No disrespect to any other elected, but charity meetings at home.
We have done that, and the bottom line is, you guys have the biggest ask. I mean, that's just where the most things are.
You have to remember what was up there a few short weeks ago.
Understood. So,
That entire
I think
board-
we have put our best foot forward. Now you're getting down into the weeds with stuff like this that we just can't, again, those positions are there for a reason. They're not fluff. Well, trust me, there's no fluff when it comes to the amount of staffing.
All right.
How many elections machines? 10?
Yeah.
Why 10?
Before we go any further, may I just offer, we're under $500,000, which in the big picture is not a whole lot. It sounds like when we get our final numbers for the wage study, that could probably be cut in half. Now we're getting down to a pretty small amount. So do we want to just say, okay, we stop here, see where we get from now until tomorrow afternoon? My team can go back and look at trends and see if there's any B items, maybe we can whittle away at it. But even if we could nip away 200,000
Absolutely.
on existing budget, I think we'd be there and we don't have to get into a situation. Well, into a situation where we know these things, this is why it's hard, is because everything is necessary and these are just the last few things that, basically are targeted. So we are at a small amount, and I think that between now and tomorrow, we could probably at least get that down by half. And then at that point, it's just kind of a balancing game anyway. When we were looking last week, it was a pretty big number. So now it's fairly manageable. So are we good with maybe just going and hitting it and just scrubbing, digging, and seeing if we can get that down by half?
I just want to bring up one more thing, and
Sure.
I'm fine with that. So with the patrol vehicles, how much equipment can be transferred from the ones that are going out of service to the new ones, like radios, video, radar, printers?
Well, again, it's just the fact that you're talking about computerized items that are obsolete, and the trends are, you can't reinstall them. Some of those Crown Vics especially, those things aren't as all compatible either. And I'd have to check with Will, on what he believes is still viable use. A lot of that we just use for the spare parts to keep the rest of the stuff going that are like that same generation. We have a completely different generation that we went to this year right now in the vehicles that are coming up the line, because the radios are obsolete. So those, if they go to start to break, then we're gonna have to be replacing them with brand new radios as well, because they don't make those models, they aren't in use anymore, and they're, again, parts and stuff, you can't get them. Same thing with the light bars, that's what we're doing right now, we're taking off some of the old light bars that leak, they constantly were changing circuit boards, we're just stockpiling those to try to keep the rest of the ones that are similar to those up and running, so that we don't have to go get a whole new light bar for that. He tries to swap out everything we can out of there. The cages, year to year, now we're into the 2020 models. Those cages don't fit in the 2020 models now. I guess if we could get the car manufacturers to get with the upfitters and say, don't change the interior dimensions and stuff, then we could be able to transfer that all the time.
And look, in the final analysis, we own the budget. Do what you can do, Dina, as you suggested. Sylvia, do your job. In the end, it's our job. And that's it. And if more cuts have to be made, they'll be made, and that's it. And at that point, it's gonna be non-negotiable, so, except as among the three of us.
Okay, so if tomorrow we don't have a number for the wage study, do you want to cancel that meeting and push it to Wednesday to save everyone
We
time?
can have a number if
HR's
we get it
yes.
worked out today. I can have you a number by tomorrow.
Okay, great.
You okay with that too, Sylvia?
I
Yes.
thought we had a meeting Wednesday, or is that tomorrow?
No,
We have
another
a
one.
meeting every day.
We have a meeting every day.
We're all on board.
Our hope is to get done before.
It's in the afternoon.
Yes.
If we can figure something out.
Okay then? Yes, sir, Jim.
Chris, would you like us to calculate 97% as well?
On the wage study,
Yes, once we get that number?
I think, how do you guys do this? Do you
I can do
calculate it, or do?
I can do it in the calculations on the
Great.
spreadsheet.
Terrific.
So then what Dina gets will already be at 97%?
Yeah, we'll work that.
Okay, got it. All right then,
All right.
public comment. None, 2:26 PM, meeting adjourned, thank you.
Good.